I'm Anthony Wright, and I am your co-host today on the Living Conversation
Adam Dietz, welcome.
and we are here with our guest who is in Italy, Tigrella Gardenia. Welcome, Tigrella.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
And you're living or in a community called Damanhur, which I want to talk with you about. You are an ambassador for plant advocacy. And
Yep.
one of the things that um, I see that you have studied is plant neurobiology and biomimicry. Have you gotten involved with anything that where plants and fungi work together?
I have studied and I have worked on some projects, especially when I worked on biomimicry projects, because the whole concept of biomimicry is how do we look to the natural world to
Uh-huh.
see how organisms do things, and then how it is that I could emulate that or work with that in so many forms. And of course, the interaction between plants and fungi is a fundamental sort
Oh
of
boy.
a fundamental model in the natural world across all ecosystems.
Yeah. And I see that you worked at Microsoft and with Real Networks and Cirque du Soleil.
Mhm.
And well, how shall we learn about you? Tell us what your passion is, please.
Oh, my passion is working very, very closely with the natural world, specifically plants. That's really probably the thing that drives me more than anything. But I am a multi-potentialite. So I'm a multi-passionate person and I have
Uh-huh.
so many different passions. As you just said, I mean, my background starts in music and music engineering, and then it moves through different forms of technology at Real Networks and Microsoft. So bringing music onto the internet and then onto other types of systems, and then performance and Cirque du Soleil plus esoteric work. And that's the reason why I live in Damanhur. I am passionate about helping people express their passions and about
Right.
more than anything, helping you work with the way your natural mind works. We have a tendency in the human world to try to kind of pigeonholed and say you should do things this way, but multi-passionates don't work that way. We have these different ways our minds bring input in and how we connect things from one to the other. And that's the beauty. That's where the innovation really is. And
Yeah.
so I work with people very closely as a coach and also as a mentor to help them see that they are a natural being and that therefore the way that they do things is natural. And when you learn how to go with that and flow, then all of a sudden you can
Oh, right.
express so much more.
Yep, absolutely. Well, one of the things that in having read your biography, I wanted to share with you something that changed my life completely. When I was about 5 years old, my parents had a cabin that was a little vacation cabin on the St. Croix River between Minnesota and Wisconsin. And in those days, and I was born in 1950, as was Falco, um, you just turn your kids out into the woods and let them go play. Well, one morning, I mean, this was in 1955, I think, and I was out in the woods, and the smell the smell of the red cedars, and the house wrens were singing. And I think I had met Demeter at that time because I had this very distinct impression that the forest loved me,
Mhm.
and I've never forgotten that. And so that there's been a real empathy that I have in attending to what plants like, what is possible for us in the natural world. And Adam, I know you were involved as a park. Um,
Yeah, I was a resource ecologist, park aide for the state parks for a while.
okay.
That's
That was very
fantastic.
challenging though because it involved a lot of spraying Roundup on undesirable
Oh
plants.
no.
So that was that was very conflicted, and I saw beautiful things, but I did nasty things in
Yeah.
that regard.
And
So
and both of
Well,
our
and
background. Go ahead.
oh, sorry, I was going to say, and this is one of the situations where like looking at the difference in the experiences, that disconnection to nature, the fact that I start to look at nature as a commodity just completely changes the
Hmm.
way that you interact with nature. All of a sudden now it
Yeah.
becomes something to control. It
Yeah.
becomes
Right.
something scary. It becomes something you have to like do things
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
rather than the actual connection and being able to work together.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
The I like to get your take on this. The history of it is very interesting because the area I was in, they traditionally Native Americans had used prescribed fire to clear out all the
mhm,
fir trees and create basically a garden of acorns and deer, right?
mhm,
So my ecology bosses thought that's the way it had to be, and we're going to use Roundup or
Uh,
chainsaw these fir trees and shoot Roundup into their core to kill them. So,
mm.
so I'm really curious as to your take on how how we should be relating. What was that healthier way to relate to the landscape in with that as an example?
Well, I think it's wonderful that you brought up prescribed fire, because most people who have kind of moved away from fire are realizing that part of the reason why is because, again, it goes back to I'm no longer a part of the ecosystem, so
Uh-huh.
therefore I don't understand my role and my function. But the fact is that humans have been, as the indigenous people have been doing, developing, and because we are members of nature, we are beings of nature ourselves. Fire is the part that we play. Like prescribed
Mm,
fire, the
mm,
idea of controlled burns is why we have two hands. We are able to do this. And so we have lost that piece of
mm,
recognizing our own function
mm,
within it.
mm.
A forest is actually more functional when the human is involved, but
Oh,
as a being of nature, not as somebody who has to control. So there's
right.
a big difference between Roundup that kills a plant and a
Yeah.
prescribed fire that actually just brings down to the root systems, because it's killing the underbrush, and certain trees still do survive and
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
continue to thrive and
Yeah.
grow. And there are some seeds that can only
Yeah.
grow inside of a fire. So
Hmm.
you need that fire
Hmm.
to melt the resin in order for the conifers to come up.
Hmm.
So when you take the human out, like, there's people who say, oh, take the human out of it because we're destructive.
Hmm.
Well, no, the reason we're destructive is because we have forgotten that we're actually part of the forest. So
Hmm.
when we reintroduce ourselves in that listening, right? Because remember, prescribed fires also meant deep, deep relationship with understanding what was necessary in that moment. Like,
Mm,
Uh-huh.
I am a part of the forest and I know I'm going to fire here, but not over here.
mm,
Right. And there's this relationship. I'm listening. I'm looking at how the deer are acting. I see how, where are all of the cones? Like there's a lot of relationship building in that. And
oh.
that creates something very different from going around and spraying. It doesn't honor those relationships when we spray, because we don't recognize how that tree, who could have survived a fire, actually relates to this bush over here,
Hmm.
who also has this piece. Like there's just all those parts that get lost when we start to introduce these artificial mechanisms.
Yeah, and it was so nonsensical to me that like if we're using poison, it's gonna come back to us. It's like,
Absolutely.
it's
It's
so
going to go
simple.
into the
And
water. It's going to go into the trees that grow. It's going to go into the food that gets produced. It's horrible.
and it felt like we were being manipulated by people who profit from that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and that's the problem, is that when you look at it from an indigenous culture and you look over time, first of all, most people think that, for example, hunter-gatherers were living in scarcity mentality, but it's the
Mm,
complete opposite. They were so connected to the land that they didn't
Mm.
even need to carry a lot of stuff. Like you could have one fork and like one knife, because I know how to build these types of
mm,
things. And I'm not like running around trying to figure out where the fruit is. I know where the animals are. So actually, we discovered that hunter-gatherer cultures actually had a lot of downtime,
uh,
because they couldn't go around gathering in certain parts of the year, and they only hunted maybe a week, and then they would spend the rest of the month in contemplation,
Amazing.
relaxing and experiencing
Mm,
the landscape.
that's
And
wonderful.
so that connection made it so that you're actually calm. That's the
Mm,
reason why, like evolutively speaking, over time, that's the reason why when we go out and spend time in nature, even just 20 minutes, our cortisol levels drop, we
mm,
relax,
mm,
because it is left over from that deep
mm,
relationship where being in nature was calming. And Burns gave us antennas and gave us open spaces. So we felt even safer. We could see, we were calm, we knew how to maneuver through that.
Yeah.
And today, instead, we go near woods and we're like, what is happening here? Until little time passes, and then all
Yeah.
of a sudden everything calms down again. And you're like, why haven't I been here before?
Yeah.
Like,
There's
type
like
of thing.
a geological clock, I think they call it, where
Hmm.
human beings have been in touch with nature for 99% of our evolution. Just this very last
Yeah,
sliver.
exactly.
Yeah.
So Adam's in my background is in Chinese philosophy, and we studied under the same mentor, Dr. Yi Wu, who was from Taiwan. My focus has been in Neo-Confucianism, and one of the points that they make is in order to cultivate your awareness, there's a thing that's called Jingzuo, which means quiet sitting. So you study the books like the Tao Te Ching and the Yi Ching. You study the works of the masters for half the day, and then you go out and sit in the forest for half the day
Hmm.
and allow the awareness to expand through the entire forest, because that way you and one of the things that the Cheng brothers talked about, and they said, notice the patterns on the inside and notice the patterns in the forest. And after a while, you will have a breakthrough and notice that those patterns are the same. What a remarkable insight.
Hmm.
So, I want to talk with you in a few minutes, and we're coming up on a break here, but I know you live in the Damanhur community, and I want to hear about that. But how does that, I'm sure you're aware of the work of Rudolf Steiner
Of
and
course.
biodynamicism. So uh, what I'd like to do is, I'm Anthony Wright, and I am your co-host today on The Living Conversation with,
Adam Dietz, thanks for
and
joining.
and we're here with our guest, Tigrella Gardenia. And how can people contact you, Tigrella?
Luckily, having an unusual name makes it super easy. Tigrella Gardenia at everything.com, at Instagram, at YouTube, at Facebook. It's always just Tigrella Gardenia, one word.
And it's Tigrilla, and then Gardenia.com.
Yep.
Great. Okay, we're going to take a short break and be right back. So stay tuned.